I'd like to now invite Greg McLaren to read his poem. Greg is a Sydney-based poet, the author of Everything Falls, published by Vagabond Press, and Darkness Disguised, Sidewalk. His third collection was published in 2007 by Puncher and Watman, and Greg was one of the three poets who was commissioned for our occasional poetry project, which Adam featured in before. And I think you also made a cameo appearance in a bookshop going through polystyrene bubbles for the Wordshed. Yeah, I think you did. Think back in Leichhardt when you worked there. He's repressed it. Okay, Greg McLaren.
Hi everyone, and thanks for coming along on a really, really crappy night. The poem that I wrote, which ended up being used in the occasional poetry event, was called Early Autumn Night, and it's for my really good friends Michelle and Ben for their wedding. And this very moment, they're about to pop out a little sprog, so it's nice timing. I'm just going to read the tail end of that. We've come from all points of the compass, driven, slept over, stepped from boozy buses, trailed across a route suggested by whereis.com, and along the way, the scent of someone turning over the earth in their garden, and then everything smells like renewal, which is, anyway, only a beginning. So this day is a beginning, a stretching out like a view from a hilltop of suburbs waking in soft dawn light, or like the ocean, calm and ambitious, more vast than it knows. All these likes remind me of a stronger word, love. If love can be a city, let it begin to sprawl in any season's light, as warm as sun-browned sandstone, fragrant as frangipani umbrellas scattering petals in your path on behalf of all botany. And now the sun drooping away in the west, cooling the air and the bridge that joins this north side to the inner west. On a day, well, like today, with you two wed, reminding us of the impossibility of ever knowing exactly how much someone means to you, even the roughest dimensions, trying to trace a limit and finding none. Now, I just want to make a confession as well, so I'm possibly oversharing. When I first heard about the Poems to Share event, I thought it was Poems to Share the Singer. So I prepared I prepared a remixed version of Turn Back Time. But thank goodness I left that on the bus. So the poem I'm going to read just a few sections from is a bit of a sort of sharing, caring thing. Last year I didn't go to Japan, which is probably a good thing, but I was dared by the friend who went to actually write a poem about not going to Japan. So the poem's called Not Being in Kyoto, and what I've done, I've nicked some of her emails and bits and pieces of other poets and just basically rampaged and so on. So I guess in a lot of ways, one of the other sides of sharing is stealing, borrowing, Indian giving. So there's a bit of that going on. And I just also want to forewarn Lachlan's mum that there's a bit of a swear in here as well. Sorry. So firstly, there's a short series of poems which I've reworked of Basho's haiku and turned them into a ridiculous Australian sort of setting. The commerce student looks up from his PS2 at the crescent moon. Enraged by poetry, I circumambulate my flat like Frank Webb in Callum Park. The Haijin passed out on a wet cobbled laneway covered in sakura. And here comes a swear, sorry. Fuck these Japanese keyboards. And it's very, very long. And there's a pantoum as well. So I've stolen from other cultures as well, so suck it up. The floating Tory appears only at low tide. There you are in wet shoes, the red Tory behind, the rain covering the mud, concrete and air. The Tory is an architect's pie. There you are in wet shoes, behind the red Tory, Moss's tourist slip-on, the not-so-floating Tory. The Tory is an architect's elaboration of pie. layers of Tory gating off the sacred moss that tourists slip on, the now floating Tory. Behind it, across the water, the city. Sacred bricks, layers of Tory gating off the sacred tarmac. Really, the city faces the shrine. Behind it, across water, the city. Sacred bricks and a blurry Tory in the water. In reality, the city faces the shrine, seeking entry, crossing silty water, drifting on muck, and only a blurry Tory in the water. Gaijin rugged up in hoodies and scarves seek entry, walk in silt from the water's drifting muck to the slow hum of water, the clacking of cameras and chattering Gaijin in hoodies and scarves, watching lichen and barnacles in a slow climb, the slow hum of water, the clacking of cameras. In the thin strip of shadow beneath the arch, lichen and barnacles in a slow climb up its columns, that narrow roof sheltering nothing, but the thin strip of shadow beneath the arch, the floating Tory only appears at low tide. This is one of my favourites. Watching The Last Samurai on the couch Easter Sunday afternoon, it's hard trying to ignore Tom Cruise, who knew Custer in a film translating Japan through a version of 19th century Americans, the Civil War and Indian Wars fresh behind them. Tom Cruise, the all-American boy, more Japanese, more extinct, than the modernising Japs. In History vs Hollywood, a History Channel mini-doco featured on the movie's bonus disc, I did in fact, ladies and gentlemen, watch this. Tom Cruise, star and producer of The Last Samurai, calls Japan that small island. And one of the other things sharing does in a poem like this is misrepresents. So here's a quote from Harold Stewart, who I spent far too much time writing on. Those for whom the main pleasure of poetry lies in its imagery and who perhaps derived some enjoyment from the author's two previous books. I just want to interrupt the poem and say I was not one of those people. We'll find this one also numerous little haiku-like touches, but here they have been combined by the architectonic principle of English poetry to build a longer structure out of their minutely observed images. And I'll just close off with... Oh, the perfect one. We're pros on a Tokyo tube now. Complicated system, but great once we figured it out. Off to Tokyo Tower today, and then off to Kyoto. Blue skies today, but still very cold. Thanks and bye.